Good evening, everyone. I am Jen Bonet. I'm the Executive Director of the Creative Coast in Savannah, Georgia. And this is part of our Make Startups Entrepreneurship Certificate Program. This is a special event we've decided to open to our constituents this evening because I've got a very special guest speaker. With us tonight is Eric Holtzclaw with Liger Partners. Eric and I have known each other probably for going on 20 years at this point. I hate to date us that way, make us feel older, but Eric is a person that I met in the Atlanta startup ecosystem, who is an expert in helping brands and especially large Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies hone in on who their customers are and launch new products by really doing a deep dive into the customer and who they are through focus groups, through interviews, through all different stuff. And so when I think about who the landmark person is I should talk to about how to best do this process that we call customer discovery that we undertake as a startup to figure out who our customer is, there is no better person to teach us on this journey than Eric. And so I'm really glad that he was able to come and join us this evening to give a talk about the customer discovery process and how to find out your customers' motivations. And Eric, welcome. And I will turn it over to you. And again, thank you so much for being here. It was great to reconnect at Dig South. And it's great to see you with your new company. And it's great to have you here. So
appreciate it. And my screen is doing weird things, isn't it?
Yeah, we see some weird things there. So we see a share pop up there.
Let me try again. So we were just talking about how well everybody was doing with Zoom, and then here I'm like, not making it work.
I jinxed it. It's all my fault.
All right, I'm going to try this again. So thanks you everyone for the coming in this evening, and let's make sure you can see the screen. So that looks good. Yes.
Got it. Looks great.
Perfect. All right. So thanks. I'm going to go through this evening and talk to you guys about uncovering your customers' secret motivations, which I love the title of that presentation. To get started, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on who I am, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of it. There are a couple places where I have some questions for you, and I'm going to talk through a couple of tactics that we use. Feel free to raise your hand or ask questions, put things in the chat if you want to learn something about it. So to start off with, Jen shared that we've known each other for a while. So a little bit about me. Prior to 2002, I call myself a recovering technologist, because prior to 2002, I was doing startups in Atlanta when it wasn't cool to be a guy in startups in Atlanta. So a bunch of .coms and things like that. Started my career at IBM and then got the startup bug from some ex-IBMers who had started a company and really ran like technology shops. So development, product management, those types of things. And in one of those, the company NoX, which you see here on the screen, we were launching a .com that sold public records back in 1995. So we were way ahead of our time in doing e-commerce. And the marketing person there took us kicking and screaming into what was called at that point a usability lab, to see if people would know how to put their credit card in the system and register and actually do a search. And with the first 4 or 5 respondents that we went through on that test, we realized that we had built a big, terrible, beautiful failure. They couldn't figure out how to do anything. And I got the bug for user research and usability and understanding how technology and products really met to customers and what drove customers to be able to use those things and be motivated by them. So around 2001, we had a certain event occur, and I was traveling about 150 to 200,000 miles a year, and that went away. So I had a choice of either being unemployed for 18 months or starting a company. And being kind of a startup serial entrepreneur guy, of course, starting a company is the right thing to do. So I started a company in that period called User Insight. That company is a research firm, does projects for Fortune 500 and Global 2000, about 250 to 300 projects a year around a lot of different industries, looking at kind of what motivates customers and how they, why they do the things that they do. In 2012, I sold my interest in that business and I wrote a book called Laddering. Laddering talks about how you do customer research and understand really what's motivating your customers. And I did start a company called Laddering Works that I could do some consulting and work through that during that period of time, and did a lot of operational work with clients And they ended up giving me their marketing department as part of the operational work. So they'd be like, hey, you're fixing our operations. Would you also run our marketing department? By the time I had 6 or 7 of those going, it wasn't a consultancy anymore. It really needed to be a company. And so in order to do it correctly, I took Laddering Works and merged it with another business called Briller Media, and we formed Liger Partners in 2018. And what's interesting about marketing nowadays is it's really a combination of both technology and the user and all of the things to get to them. And so my background works really well, understanding both technology and users and kind of combining those. Just recently, we merged with another business called Satori. And Satori is back to my roots with user insights. So it is a research firm and does classic research with companies around focus groups and one-on-ones and contextual inquiries and things like that. So I've had this very interesting career of being a technologist, building products and trying to figure out how to get customers to use them, truly understanding the user, and then moving into this phase where those kind of things have come together in a way, specifically with the pandemic, that one of the biggest digital transformation and how you can kind of understand your customers has become very important. And so tonight we're going to talk about uncovering your customers' secret motivations. And before we get into that, I thought it might be interesting to say, well, why the heck does this matter? So why do we care about that? Why is the secret motivation of a customer?
Eric, we're still having a little bit of problems with your screen, like the U and uncovering is cut off.
Weird. Okay.
T in traditional, yeah.
All right. Sorry
I
about
changed the layout of how I'm recording it, but it didn't change what we saw.
And this is why we will never truly get away from having face-to-face presentations and meetings. So hold on a second.
Thanks.
And my Chrome doesn't want to come up now. Let's see if I can. Up in something else. My Chrome has stopped working on my machine. Let's see if I can get to it in Safari. Does anybody know a show tune or something that we can sing?
I'm just going through some settings to see if it could be on my side.
No
I don't
worries.
think so.
Well, my Chrome literally was acting really weird just now, so it could be it.
All right. Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Sorry about that, but I'm glad you said something. It'd be better to know that than to. So let's see if this works. How about that?
I see the whole slide. Yeah.
Yay. All right, perfect. All right, so I was here. So uncovering your customers' secret motivations. And so before we get into answering that question, why does this matter? So why is this an important thing for us to look at? Why do we really want to know who our customers are and what they really care about? Well, you have to go back and kind of look back in time at what has happened over the course of the kind of recent history. So prior to 2008, when Jen and I were doing a lot of technology type work, companies had a great control over the customer journey. Search engine optimization and keywords drove customers to company sites, both owned and aggregated, and supported a linear customer path. So we would go from awareness to exploration to comparison to purchase in sort of this very specific path. And if you ever were in technology companies back in the early days, you worried about when somebody went to the landing page, where were they going to click next and how do we convert them? And so this path was really important. And it kind of like walking into a Home Depot, you want people to walk in the front, go down an aisle, pick up a product, go to the front, check out, and walk out. And so we thought about that from a technology perspective as well. So how do I make sure that I, really make this path through as quickly as possible? And my homepage had to be very important. Once we got to 2008, we got 3 disruptive technologies. Social media, so all of us were on Facebook instead of just the people in college. ubiquitous internet, and smartphones. So my iPhone was the only thing I've ever stood in line for in my life to get. And I brought my daughter with me so that I could buy 4 of them because you're only allowed 2 per person. And so these 3 technologies dramatically changed the customer journey. And so instead of controlling the way that people flow through that customer journey, they have the opportunity to drop in and out of it and kind of do their own research. Customers are also pretty smart. They know that once they visit one of your digital properties, you've put some code on their site or whatever, and all of a sudden you're going to start seeing advertising. And so they purposefully avoid some of the digital properties if they're in the search for a product because they don't want to give away what they're doing. It also changes if you think about the last time you bought a car, it was unlikely that you walked onto the car dealership and said, hey, you guys have some cars here. Would you show me around? You probably brought your phone in and said, hey, you have this car and I'd like to go see it. So we had to start thinking about the customer and the customer really being in control at this period of time in a much more different way. And what motivated them became more important than building the most prime path that we could direct them down. And marketing then became a very complex animal. Now, this is typically where I stopped this presentation in the past until the events of what happened in the past year. Now we have the post-COVID customer journey. And the problem with the post-COVID customer journey is some of these touch points we had with our customers disappeared. They don't go to the store as often as they did. And we've been doing this long enough now that these new patterns have been ingrained in what we do and how we work. I was a casual user of Instacart prior to the pandemic. I don't go to the grocery store anymore. It shows up Sunday morning. I have all of my stuff, and it's just the occasional, whoops, I forgot something that I would run to the grocery store. So shelf space, the ability to, catch me on an impulse aisle is unlikely. So you now have to figure out how to get into my ecosystem in a way, and I'm not maybe searching specifically of the new product for that product. So this is the challenge that we're up against. And this challenge has dramatically changed some of the metrics that the industry looks at as it relates to kind of getting in front of your customer and getting them to convert. So some facts that we need to look at and consider is it takes 15 to 20 exposures to a name, brand, or idea before awareness is established. That number used to be 7 to 10. So it's almost 3 times the number it used to be. Greater than 70% of the decision is made before the customer walks into your store, goes to your website, or calls you. I like to tell people with sales teams that all your salesperson does is either close the deal or screw it up. Like that's all they've done because that customer has made the decision to buy if they picked up the phone. Marketing establishes the relationship and accelerates the sale, and sales manages the transaction. So marketing was a transactional thing. Sales was a relationship thing. Marketing was about getting you into the store, and then a salesperson would pick you up. Oh, you have 2 kids? I have 2 kids. You went to this college? I went to this college. And that a relationship was established. Now, in most cases, the salesperson is really just a transactional figure in the overall ecosystem. Sales does need to follow up about 5 to 7 times, and marketing often does a lot of that work. So it may appear that it's a salesperson, but it's marketing building the messaging and sending it across. So if you take my 20, 21, and you add to the 5 to 7, we're talking about 28 times that I need to convert someone from awareness all the way down to actually making a purchase and buying from me. Human attention span is also only 7 seconds. Goldfish have the attention span of 8. So we have less of an attention span than goldfish. So there's a lot of things that got to get in our way as human beings as we're considering whether or not we're going to buy a product, consider a service, download an app, those types of things. And it can take somewhere around 6 to 9 months to pay off for a consistent approach. Now, when I am pitching and talking about Liger as a marketing agency, this is often where I stop. But you're here to understand what is the secret motivations behind customers buying. And if you know the secret motivation behind a customer, you can bring these numbers down. Now, most of my clients barely believe in marketing. So to get them to believe in user experience and research and some of those types of things is another bridge I have to take. So we'll get them down this path, and then we start to look at, okay, let's talk to some of your customers. Let's understand your buyers. Where do they fit so that we can identify these patterns? if they did a little bit of research and a little bit of understanding at the beginning, they could start to bring these numbers down and convert people in a much faster way. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about what that looks like and what some of those drivers might be and how you get to those. So my first question for you is ideal customer. So when you hear somebody talk about, hey, our company has this ideal customer, what are some of the things that they might mention to you as it relates to an ideal customer?
So if anyone wants to participate, you can answer in the chat and or unmute yourself and participate.
So some of your ideal customer stuff might be things like age, right? I've got some
Lisa says has a budget.
budget. That's a good one. Yeah. So they got some money to spend. So what's their income? They have a budget for a product, pays on time. I like that, Phil. You're a man after my own heart.
Yeah. I mean, with our organization, the Creative Coast, we play at this intersection of creatives, techies, and entrepreneurs. So within within the city of Savannah, we are looking for a very specific type of target customer that, you know, is probably a graphic designer, user experience, content person, or a coder or an entrepreneur. So that we kind of narrow it down from I guess, skill set and mindset.
Yeah, skills. So might be job they have. You know, we hear things about income. They have, you know, there's maybe a certain age range. You know, those kind of things. Like there's often what you'll see demographics. So you know, they'll say, oh, this product has been built for men, or it's been built for women, or it's, you know, for this certain age range or budget or whatever. And so what happens is then we start to think about customers and buyers very singularly, like we put them in these two big lumped groups. And so I'm going to give you an example. So you've got two people, they're both born in 1948. They both grew up in England. They're married for the second time, two children, successful in business, wealthy. They spend their winter holidays in the Alps, and they like dogs. So these two people, demographically, we could agree are exactly the same person. Yes? So if you were to take demographics and to use, and most of the social media and ad tools and things like that, break these down into these buckets. So if I told you that these two people were Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne, might you think that they're different people? Very much so, driven by very different motivations, very different things that impact their decisions, who they care about, kind of what their secret motivation might be. So when we start to make these broad strokes assumptions about who our buyers are based on either the revenue they have or the income that they make or how many kids are in their house, we start to make some very gross assumptions about why they make the decisions to buy from us. And at the surface, we'll make some that are just gross assumptions that don't really get us to our end goal and impact our success when we're trying to drive sales and increase revenue. And so to kind of look at this, we want to start thinking about the concept of laddering. And so the reason that I wrote the book Laddering and called it that is laddering is a technique. And so this is the deepest slide of all of them. The rest of them are going to be a little bit more fun around, you know, what does laddering get you to? But laddering is the process by which you understand what really drives your customer to make the purchase. And you do want to start with what your demographic segments are. So if you told me we're going to target, you know, mostly 40 to 60-year-old men and 40 to 60-year-old women with certain income, we might see those broken into two different segments. And we want to interview at least 8 people in each of those segments. That's the bare minimum number of people that you want to interview in each segment. And while you're interviewing them about why that product or service, you want to start very broad within the kind of category you're thinking about and start to ask probing questions or make observations. So the thing you need to know about customers and people you're selling to is that they lie, and they lie all the time. So they're going to tell you that they're organized or that it's about money or whatever. And you've got to get up underneath that lie and find out what's really driving them to make the decision. Money is never the issue. We all find money for the things that we want to buy or that we want to spend money on. I love, and one of the reasons I talk about this observations is I'll talk to someone who tells me that they're very organized. But if I do these interviews or discuss it within one of their personal spaces, which is one of the best places to do it, you'll find that maybe their desk is a mess, or they have that junk drawer that's full of things. So they want to be perceived as organized, but they may not be an organized person. You need to dig 5 levels deep. So that laddering concept is you ask why 5 times. So why did you buy that product? Tell me, why did you buy that product? Why did you, until you can get down to what they really bought it, because they'll tell you features to begin with, but really there's a reason. There's something that's sort of satisfying part of their motivations and drivers that got them into buying that product. An example I used to use all the time is when we had stereo systems. Any of you remember that? And so a multi-CD stereo system, people would say, oh yeah, I got it because it was really convenient to play CDs. Their true motivation, if you dug up underneath it, was when they have a party, they don't want to be burdened with changing out CDs during the party or while they're enjoying their dinner. They wanted to kind of work for themselves on the back end, and they could create that playlist. They don't care about how many CDs are there. It's more about the features and functions of what it does for them and how it makes them feel. And so we're looking for these patterns to identify the drivers, and you really don't know what the patterns are until you've had the conversations, but they'll become natural because as you have a conversation with someone, you'll start to kind of predict what they're going to say next. And so the importance of getting out with your customers, asking them why they buy from you, what's really driving them in this decision process, and not accepting an artificial answer is really important. You have to get very deep with this and be sort of a little bit of a therapist. It's one of my favorite things I do with this, and biggest cocktail party trick is when I'm running one of these projects is to figure out where people fit in the different categories. You will have somewhere between 3 to 7 groupings based on your drivers. So there's only going to be 3 to 7 groups of people, and they're going to have 2 or 3 reasons why they buy from you. So while this sounds really complex and it may be hard work at the beginning, once you know this, you can use this over and over again for your company and selling your products and services and using the words that they use in order to buy. And it's not going to be about your features or functions. And so I'm going to give you some concrete examples because this is a really deep part of it. And basically I took what was a 250-page book and basically boiled it down onto a page. So if you want to know more about this, Laddering is my book. You can read it or listen to me talk about it on Kindle. And I give you some tips and techniques of how this works. But to give you some examples around sort of secret motivations, what I've done is I've taken these business to consumer personas. So this is a research project that we did looking at the use of social media across business to consumers and understanding how social media really played for them. We're only representing a few of them here. There were about 18. And I'm going to break this down into what I call the social media family. So we're going to talk about the social media family and how the social media family interacts with each other and what their secret motivations are for use and otherwise. So to start off with, we're going to talk about the grandmother of the family. She is traditional Terry. And some of the things that we learned when we talked to traditional Terry is that she lives for her family and friends. Everything that she does as it relates to products, services, and the use of technology must be easy. Her messages are you or I, as long as you know it's from me. So she doesn't care if it's a you message or an I message, as long as you know that she's the one who gave you that message. She's not concerned with being the first person to share something or the first person to see something, as long as they think it's funny. This person will share something from 3 years ago that they think is funny that you've seen a million times. They like predictable outcome or humor. So you think serialized sitcoms, like all the sitcoms we saw, some of us growing up, and we're like, oh yeah, this sitcom's going to end this way because all of them do. So PG-13, and they crave connection and nostalgia. And the thing that's most important to traditional Terry, and the thing that really drives her, is her secret motivation is to be remembered. So the reason that she's sharing information and the reason that she's on social media is she wants her family and friends to remember her. She wishes that we still had Sunday dinners and that people would come and spend time and eat fried chicken and hang out on the back porch, but they understand the world has changed and that's not really a possibility. So they're participating in Facebook simply to be remembered. So that annoying older adult that you see on Facebook all the time that's sharing things and you're wondering why, it's because they want you to remember them and they may feel forgotten. So their secret motivation is simply around being remembered. So if I'm selling a product or service to a traditional Terry that I want them to buy, because they're typically going to buy for the benefit of someone else, I may use words around, hey, buy this, your family will really appreciate it, as something that they will remember. So memories, nostalgia, all those types of things are very important to this group. If I look at my next, ambitious Amber, she is the mother of the family and she's proud of the family and what has been accomplished. It must be easy for her as well. So she's not going to do things that are difficult. So don't ask her to participate in a big sweepstakes or take a lot of steps to accomplish something. She likes I messaging, not you. She talks about herself a lot, and herself can be her family. She likes her own message, not a canned message. So she's even, if she sees something, she's going to convert it to her own kind of interpretation. She does not want to offend. She is looking for affirmation. She's current on pop culture and new trends, but indirectly. She doesn't watch any of these things. She finds out about it from her kids or by going to dinner with someone. And she likes kind of smart humor, kind of unpredictable, but not offensive humor. So she is our kind of queen of Pinterest and queen of Instagram. Her family always looks perfect. Every image has gone through the right filter, and she wants to be seen as successful. So everything that she's is highly curated. Multiple pictures will have been taken, thoughtfulness about what the outfits look like. So for her, it really is about being seen as successful. That is her secret motivation. So if I'm selling a product or service to her, then I want it to sell her something that's the best. You also have to be careful when you talk to ambitious Amber about dieting, or you talk to her about feeding her family, because she may be feeding them junk food 4 or 5 days a week, but she will never admit it to you. So she wants to be seen as the perfect mom. So you cannot trust her when she tells you that, I'm a good mom, I take care of my kids, we don't go out to fast food that much. Okay, can I see your bank statement? So let's test that out. Like, is your idea Chick-fil-A but not the fried nuggets? Like, how do we know that this is what you're doing? Next one is Everyday Eddie. So Everyday Eddie enjoys spending time with friends and family, or friends at the bar or at a game. He has interests outside of social media and technology. In fact, most of his social media use is over the shoulder. So he's looking over the shoulder of someone else to see a video or see a meme. He's rarely ever, if at all, on any of the social media channels. They talk about what they see as funny, commercials, videos in person, not electronically. They have the fewest number of friends, but their friends are ride or dies. So ambitious Amber has friends that may not really be friends, like they're people that hang out with at school and otherwise. Eddie's friends are his friends. He may not be on social media at all, looks up information about interest, sports, or news, and he's very low tech. He probably recently moved to a smartphone, and he may still be butt calling you from his smartphone just like he did from his flip phone. So Everyday Eddie is looking for authentic connection. So he really wants to be, he doesn't understand this like fake friend thing and being connected to people you don't know. And it's not because he's worried about privacy. He really is looking for that kind of human to human, eyeball to eyeball connection. Next is Vice Vicky, which is one of my favorite. It's my life. I'm young and I'll do what I want to. Things must be easy. She is I. All she does is talk about herself. It's got to be her message, not canned. She is okay with humor at others' expense. She's looking for recognition. She feels like she sets the standard. She will associate with Vice brands. So if you're working with a Vice brand, a great person to work with is Vice Vicky, because she's all about it. She's going to be the person who helps intro that to her friends. She's looking for exclusive things to share. And she has 2 social accounts. She has one for her family and she has one for her friends. So there's the grandma Instagram and there's the friends Instagram. And she keeps those 2 groups very separate. And you have to ask them. When we would ask this person about their social media, we would say, what account? And they'd say, which one? Which of my 2 accounts do you want to know about? And of course, we want to know about both, right? So her secret motivation is acceptance, and it's acceptance by her friends. So these are not necessarily great friends all the time, but these are the people that she hangs out with. These are the people that she sort of, she's a little bit of a renegade. She's testing herself and testing her oats and where she's going to go. But if you, again, vice brands, if we're doing anything with alcohol or vaping or any of those kind, this is our first persona we're going to go to help sort of get that out to market. Next is Popular Penny. She loves social media and keeping up with friends from school. Everything for her must be easy. She uses I, not you message, doesn't want to offend. She's looking for affirmation. She's an also person because she doesn't want to be the first person to share something. So if something gets shared and she doesn't get a lot of activity on it, she will take it down. So if she posts something on social media and she doesn't get the like she expected or the interaction, she will take the post down. And she mostly works in juvenile or innocent humor. And while this persona sounds like it's one that might be a younger, like teenager persona, this persona can go up into its 30s, 40s. These are the people who still call their parents to figure out how to sign up for their benefits at the office. So, they really are looking for affirmation and primarily from their family. So they don't want to be seen as having done anything wrong. They're very much rule followers. That's kind of the lane that they live in. So acceptance is a big deal for them, but by their family. And then Cool Cade, he's the one who's looking for something interesting that other people haven't seen. I always use the example Lost, the television show Lost. Cade found Lost first. So he's the one watching the shows in like the Squid Game. Like I just heard about it. Well, Cade watched the Squid Game before I did, right? Like, regrettably, I'm ambitious Amber. If you want to know who I am, that's who I am, right? I figured that out as part of this project. I was like, yeah, that's who I am. Thought I was Cool Cade, but I'm not. So Cool Cade is the one who finds things and then tells the rest of us about it. He has to have real world experience with something. So he has to try it on his own before he's going to tell you. Authenticity is important. He's looking for application. So it's got to have like a practical meaning for him. It's not just for fun. He's intrigued by novelty, something new. And the interesting thing about Cade is he'll find really cool things, but he doesn't tell you about them. You have to ask him about it. So he's the one you want to ask, what are you watching? What product did you just buy recently? And he'll have some really cool thing that he's using or bought. And you're like, oh, I wish I'd known about that. And then it can become part of your life and make your life easier. So his secret motivation is something that's novel. And what's important with all of these people and how you think about like those motivations is you need to know how they interact with each other. So Penny, Vicky, and Amber are primarily online. So they primarily get most of their information, consume things online. Cade is both online and kind of offline. So he lives in this world between online and in person. And he's likely friends with Eddie, and he may be dating Vicky. And so when you think about introducing a product or introducing a service, you have to know who you're going to introduce it to first, because if you introduce it to the wrong group, the other group will not pay attention to it. Cade is very fickle. He wants to have seen something first. And so if I have a product and I introduce it and I give it to Amber or Vicky first, Cade doesn't want anything to do with it. So I have to figure out how to get it to him, and then he'll help me spread it to the other people. And you'll notice that there's some connections to this in-person person that I have to get to if I want to present a product there. There's some great word of mouth marketing approaches that you can get to an Eddie. In fact, which I don't have time for tonight, but look up the case study on Pabst Blue Ribbon, the word of mouth marketing for Pabst Blue Ribbon. And that's how they came back from the brink, is through Eddie and doing some word of mouth marketing type techniques in the bars and otherwise. And so that's how they kind of brought Eddie back. And so if you think this is just on the B2C side, so I just talked about consumers and some of you sell to businesses, this also is true on the business side. So this is an example of business to business personas. And there are 4 major categories of business to business personas. This one was around them looking at either a new technology or a new vendor. So on the right, I have their selection process. Are they dependent or independent? And then are they reactive or proactive with their willingness to adopt a new technology or a new service? My group 1 up in the upper right is a lot like my Cool Cades. They will try something very quickly. So they'll download an app or some without really a lot of thought. They'll try it out. They're okay if it has some bugs on it. but if it doesn't really fit a need for them, they'll move on pretty quickly. They're very informed, confident. If you're doing an alpha or beta test, you want to go after group one because they're the ones who are going to try something out for you first. They're very independent though. They don't spend a lot of time in networking events. They're kind of like making decisions on their own. My group two has an extensive network. So they go to networking events, they're in Vistage, they're doing kind of roundtables, they're taking classes, they're fast followers, and they use the word strategic partner. So when they're picking a company, they want to partner with someone and they want to do things kind of almost after group one has done it. Group two is friends with group one, but group one doesn't go to group two's networking events. So group two's often taking things from group one and talking about them in their networking events to spread them across. Group three are reluctant to change. They want a turnkey solution, and instead of using the word partner, they'll use the word vendor. So they'll say, I'm looking for a vendor, and they want it to be solved without there being a lot of work on their side. And they're often being drugged into making the change. So you've heard works on the business versus working in the business. Group one created the business. Group two works on the business, and group three works in the business. So they're never going to networking events because they never have the time to get away and go do anything because they've never put the right systems in place to make themselves more efficient. And then finally, we have group four. And if you're going after group four, you know it because it's typically government. So you have to maintain status quo. They have budgets that they're going against, or they have to follow an RFP process. You'll also see franchises that fall in this category as well. So a franchise organization that really can't make a lot of decisions on their own, they're constrained by something. And so the decision to sell to this group is really a very specific one. When we're working with companies and we do a lot of B2B work, we make them choose one of these groups, and then another one is a secondary because we're going to have different messaging as it relates to getting into them and kind of presenting a new product or service. And another thing that's important is how long they spend sort of in the decision funnel. So group one, you'll notice, goes immediately from direction to application and spends little time in comparison or evaluation, where my other group two is going to do a little bit more time in evaluation, and group three is going to be doing a lot more time in comparison. So the type of content, the things I need to share with them change based on which one that I'm working with. So secret motivations underneath these groups are, this group is, they're trailblazers. They really want to be seen as like one of the first to try something. They're out there in front. This group wants to build a healthy, successful company that really doesn't own them. And this group may have inherited a company that can't seem to kind of get out of their own way. A lot of second generation often in this category, and would like more time, but may never really, their identity is so tied up in the business that if you gave them a better way to do the work, they probably wouldn't take it because they are the business, and they sort of hold that as they're a martyr as it relates to the business, and they may have other outside interests. So what you want to know about your ideal customer, kind of in wrapping here in our time frame, we want to know where they hang out. We want to know what their day looks like, where they get their information, what their challenges and frustrations are, goals and priorities, preferred form of communication, the phrases and exact language they use, what makes them happy or successful. So how can you get them a promotion to their next job? How can you make them successful? You notice I haven't talked at all about the product or the service or the features or the functions. What goals and motivations do they have personally? And why do they buy from you? Why do they really buy from you? Do you make them look good? Do you make them feel good? Do you make them, their life easier? Getting underneath that and that secret motivation they have, do you make them, are they remembered by other people because you have a service that's just exceptional and they give that as a gift? Like, those are the drivers that we have to get to be more specific and exacting with our messaging. So that is a lot of content in a little 45-minute window about getting to secret motivations. Are there some questions? Does that make sense? Are there some questions I can answer?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So if you've got a question, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll try and help coordinate this. Eric, I have a question for you. Like you said that you are, which one? Ambitious Amber. So
Mhm.
how did you go through the process to figure out which one you are? Was it the one that just like, did you know immediately after hearing the profile, or?
Nope, I didn't. And that's actually the other thing is that we have, so you have, the who you are versus aspirational. So there's aspirational versus actual.
Yeah.
And everyone speaks in aspirational, like everyone speaks in aspirational. And so aspirationally, I hope to be cool Cade. And so when
Right.
we were going through the project, I was like, I'm cool Cade. I'm cool Cade. That's who I am. And then we were interviewing enough of the ambitious Amber characters, and I started to hear their responses. And I'm like, oh, I'm ambitious Amber, right? Like I had a realization in the study at one of the points that I'm like, oh, I don't find the stuff. I love to hear somebody else tell me about it. And then I go tell everybody else about it. And I take credit for the fact that I found it. I didn't find it. Cool Cade found it. And the interesting thing about Cool Cade is he only represents about 4% of the population. It's a very small number.
Right.
So if you have a cool new product that you're trying to push out, you really have to be very careful and make sure you go to Cool Cade in the right way.
Interesting. Yeah. So, okay, we have a question from Phil, and it's related to the B2B slides there that showed adoption by blue, orange, green, and then category 4, government officials and whatnot. He's asking, what about the gray? Are they best totally avoided?
Yeah, they're not avoided. They don't fit within this funnel of decision making, because typically what happens in the gray category is you have to go through an RFP process, or you have to go through some kind of, preferred vendor list or whatever. So there's procurement in place and there's all these other things. And so the marketing you do can improve your chances of being asked to do that, but the process for it is far different than group 1, 2, or 3. So it'd be hard to establish a specific funnel, because you need to know within that gray, what are some of those constraints are working against, government. You need to bid once a year, typically. Like those are the kind of considerations that get in place. Yeah. And they make decisions that are not always like as, what do you call it, as sane as you would expect, right? Like we bid for one the other day, and they want the office of the agency they're going to work with to be within 50 miles of their office. They don't want the best agency. They just want an agency that's within 50 miles of their office. So,
oh, I'm in economic development. I sort of get that, but
yeah. There's like 4 minimum requirements. Yeah.
Right. But I do think it's interesting though, because even in a category 4 organization, you still might find a cool Cade.
You might. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then he could become your evangelist within that entity to teach you or help you navigate the process. Right.
Yes. What happens though is business to business personas. I've always told people that, yes, I agree. That cool Cade that's in a category 4 is probably a very frustrated individual. Like that's what you run into, is like culture wise, you find people working in certain companies because they feel right. We did this when also around employee benefits, and category 3 often sees their employees as a burden, where category 2 may see their employees as like an asset. And so the types of benefits they might provide in these 2 categories was very different, like bare minimum versus, vet insurance, right? So you think about what that looks like. And we got a question from Lisa about, do you find personas differ at all when purchasing a service or versus a product? So Lisa, it has to do with the risk. So the risk, that greater than 70% decision that I told you earlier, that's mostly a B2B stat. It does fit in B2C. B2B is a very dangerous decision. If I'm buying a product for my company and it's going to be an expensive SaaS platform or something, if I get embarrassed in front of my boss, I might not get my next promotion. I might get fired. Like my salary is at risk. So if I go and buy a car that my wife doesn't like, the only person who's mad at me is my wife, and I can go take the car back and buy another one. So when you think about B2B, there's a higher risk, and the more expensive the product is, the more risky it is, and the more I have to have assurance that I'm buying the right thing.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah, everybody thinks like B2B buying, and you're working with people you don't know, and you got to go back. You don't want to put a thing in place. And like we're replacing a tool here at our company that was a terrible decision. And we're having to pull out for, all of our clients and put in a new one. And the person who picked that tool isn't so happy, right? Like, it's a sad thing. It's impacting the entire company. It's not just one person.
Yeah. I guess when I think about selling into B2B, I've always tried to find an evangelist that can help me navigate that chain of command, because that's where you get into, there's the person that's problem you're solving, there's their boss who has to approve the purchase, there's the CFO or CTO that has to approve it from a technology or overall budget perspective, and then there's usually the saboteur, as I like to refer to them, who's the person in IT saying, I could build this for cheaper.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
You don't need to buy it. I'll build it ourselves. Right. And so, when you start thinking about B2B sales, you're really thinking about there's 7 or 8 people that you have to convince. But you need that evangelist that's going to take you through the path.
Yeah. Yeah. The person who says, I'll build it. And then you're like, and then we'll forklift upgrade it 2 years from now when you can't maintain the features and functions. But yeah, absolutely. B2B is a much more complex, but you can start to companies go through natural phases. So you can identify companies that were 1s that then moved to 2s and now have become 3s, So getting to the point, my favorite part is just hearing little words, like we're looking for a partner or we're looking for a vendor. Like that starts to give me a little bit of an idea of how important this is to them or what they think of the relationship, like that word alone. Because the secret to this is you're not looking for lots of words, you're looking for 1 or 2 keywords, right? We worked with a security company on a parental control product. And I don't remember the question, so don't ask me, but we on our screener could ask parents 1 question and we knew which persona they were.